about to hear from has the responsibility of being Director of Lands for the government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. This is Thomas Chan, who's had this job over the past year or so. And the Lands Department, which he now runs, is responsible for administering the land, managing it, and crucially, surveying and mapping it. There may be arguably no place on Earth where this is more crucial than it is in Hong Kong, because every square inch or square centimeter, as we put it there, of this territory is so fiercely contested by various users. And so Thomas Chan and his department have been both responsible for trying to see how the land will be best used, and also he's been crucially involved in pursuing the government's initiative to have a common spatial data infrastructure, but within 5 years from now, as part of Hong Kong's continued emergence as a world-class smart city. Thomas Chan has been with the government in Hong Kong since 1991 in a variety of roles there. He also has been a deputy representative to the World Trade Organization for 5 years in the early, in the previous decade. But if you would like to know what it is like to try to put together a coherent land program in the place where every inch of that land is more valuable, at least in financial mother terms, than any place else on Earth, Thomas Chan, Director of Lands, is the one who can tell us. So please join me in welcoming Thomas Chan.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Let me set up first. So good morning, everyone. Now, as a first-timer at the Esri user conference, I'm honored to address this distinguished audience. Now, what I want to share with you today is a vision of mine. Now, I believe the virtual world, the online world, which is now becoming a bigger and bigger part of our life, is going to merge with the real world to make both a better one for people living in it. And I believe the map, the GIS technology, and the spatial data infrastructure we are pursuing is the link and the conduit for this merging process. That's why we are pursuing 4D mapping in Hong Kong, as I'll explain later on in my presentation. Now, but let's not get ahead of myself. Let me start by talking a bit about the place I come from. Now, you may all know Hong Kong as a metropolitan city, a financial center in the Eastern Hemisphere, a business gateway to China. But what makes it really unique and fascinating as a city is actually its urban form, a city of skyscrapers fronting a beautiful harbor surrounded by pristine mountains. Now, it's entirely accidental from history. Hong Kong has a hilly topography. We started the city off around the harbor, the blue part in the middle, at the foothills of an island on the one side and a peninsula on the other. Now, as we expand, we reclaim along the coast and inlets. And meanwhile, we keep the mountains green. So anywhere in the city, you're surrounded by skyscrapers, but you're also no more than 10 to 15 minutes away from the green nature. Now, so this is where we end up with our city, a very compact one. How compact? We have used only 24% of our land to house 7 million population. That translates into a population density of about 27,000 per square kilometer. Now, we are the densest major city in the world among advanced economies, more than double the second place, Singapore, and more than 10 times the density in Los Angeles and New York. Now, all these while we protect nearly half of the land as nature parks. So that's what makes Hong Kong unique. Another indicator of our compactness is how we travel. Our car ownership rate is only 12%, and that's counting all private cars, goods vehicles, buses, taxis, and coaches. And 90% of our trips are by public transport, 40% of them by railway, including subways. And over 80% of our jobs are located within 500 meters of a railway or subway station, and 2/3 of our populations are living within a kilometer of a station. Now, a major challenge that we are facing now is to grow our city. Population is still growing, households are getting smaller, economy is booming, and business is branching into new areas, such as innovation and technology. Now, to accommodate all these, we estimate that we need to expand the city size by at least another 20% over the next 3 decades. Now, growing a compact city like Hong Kong is not an easy task. The land that can be built upon is scarce. It's very expensive, as Jim has said. Infrastructure is costly, and building more of them is constrained by existing developments already. And existing developments are not easy to reconfigure, especially when the real estate is so valuable. Now, at the same time, we also have to make sure that all the systems supporting the city functions, transport, water, utilities, drainage, sewerage, they all have to remain highly efficient and resilient all the time, and to remain the same as we further expand them. So what shall we do? We need to make Hong Kong into a smart city. We published our smart city blueprint last year. Now, this is what every major city is doing. Everyone wants to be smart, right? Now, we all know the buzzwords: smart living, smart environment, smart mobility, smart economy, smart community, smart government. I hesitate a bit on the last one, but all these for sustainable development. But how exactly are we going to do it? Now, one thing we set to do in Hong Kong is to make Hong Kong smarter by making its map smarter. This is where the lands department I work comes in. Now, we are the authority for land administration and also for surveying, mapping, and positioning. And we pride ourselves in championing innovative applications and technological development in Hong Kong's map and GIS. Now, we believe a smarter map is an essential infrastructure for a smart city. And by that, we mean not just a map, and more than a GIS. We call it the spatial data infrastructure, as most other cities are calling it. But what we envision is building a bridge between the real world and the virtual world, and a platform upon which human activities in the virtual world can be matched up with their counterparts in the real world, and the quality of life of the citizens can be greatly enhanced by such a match. And our plan is to make our map smarter by what we call the 4D mapping: definitive, diversified, dynamic, and data sharing. Now, first, we have to make sure our map are definitive. Hong Kong has already got comprehensive and detailed map and aerial photos coverage that is being updated constantly and frequently. We make our map as detailed and close to reality as possible. We also link it to the real world through an accurate satellite positioning reference network. The idea is to make it versatile enough to carry all kinds of spatial data and accommodate all kinds of applications that can seamlessly link the real world with the virtual one. But that's not good enough. New technologies like autonomous cars and drones, environmental sensing and detection, intelligent monitoring and surveillance, automated construction and maintenance, etc. These demand a much higher level of positioning accuracy and a much more demanding real-time service level, and also a much more thorough coverage. That is particularly challenging for a compact city like Hong Kong, full of skyscrapers. We are therefore pursuing different means to enhance our positioning infrastructure, like smart lampposts, and also latest technology for indoor mapping and positioning. Now, the second aspect is to make sure our map is more diversified by using various means to enrich it. Now, we have already been using drones extensively to make more frequent and accurate update of maps, as well as to enrich maps with texture models of the exterior of buildings. Now, in the compact environment of Hong Kong, the use of mobile mapping technology with surveying equipment on a car or even a backpack is becoming an increasingly important source of survey data. We have been using mobile vehicle survey not only to provide street views, but also to enable more precise capturing of structures on the street, like street furniture. Now, one interesting example is our efforts to map the 3D pedestrian network in Hong Kong. This means mapping the myriads of footbridges and tunnels apart from ground-level walkways connecting between buildings and subway stations. And we use both building data and mobile mapping in the process to do it. Now, looking ahead, as building information modeling sees wider adoption, BIM will become a more important source of mapping data. And we have already set our direction to make sure that BIM is adopted in Hong Kong fully with GIS in mind, so that all the structures and building data from BIM could be readily put onto our map as 3D models. Now, going forward, we are also contemplating greater use of crowdsourcing technology to help us further enrich the map. Another aspect to bear in mind for a smart map is that it has to be dynamic. Now, we have to give up the traditional notion of a fixed map, that is a map reflecting the snapshot of a place at a particular time and space for a specific purpose. Rather, we must recognize that we could not know in advance for what purpose and how the map will be used for. And the map should be as dynamic and versatile to allow a host of yet unforeseen applications. Now, for instance, it's becoming commonplace that all kinds of geospatial data analysis are enabled by GIS. More refined and diverse spatial data on GIS would enable even more innovative analysis and applications by combining spatial data from different sources and also simulating more closely and accurately the real-world environment. From the citizen's perspective, that also means smarter applications through software, making use of dynamic maps and real-time spatial data. Now, this is just an example of a real-life app that we have launched for a revitalized industrial district in Hong Kong, and we provide real-time information on parking availability, pedestrian routing and connectivity, as well as events and activities in the vicinity. Now, a dynamic map is certainly going to also make life easier for our bread and butter work of land administration. For example, we have been using new mapping technology to conduct change detection, both for map updating and also for detecting illegal structures. Now, we have also been publishing land information more widely to the community as an attempt to help us make better use of our land resources. And this is an example on the screen. We are making, through the free online map available we provide, we are now making available information about the vacant land that the community could apply and use. Now, finally, and most importantly, I think a smart map has to enable data sharing, and better still, foster data sharing. By that, we mean not only the wider dissemination of spatial data, but actually in giving a spatial dimension to all kinds of data, geotagging them, and enabling them, and thereby enhancing their link with the real world that we are living in. Now, we have already taken a step towards this. As part of the government's Open Data Initiative, our department has helped geotagging the open data made available by various government departments and disseminating them in a geospatial manner through a map with associated application program interface that people can call and use. Now, again, we may not know what applications there will be, but geotagging data and making them publicly available in a spatially enabled format is definitely what we believe a smart map should do. Now, to give you one specific example, we update our population census about once every 5 years or so as a reference for policy making and also service planning. And we have helped our census department in Hong Kong to turn their last round of survey data in 2016 into geospatially enabled data for publishing. Now, for the planning of the city, we have for years been making use of spatial analysis of census data to help us plan land uses and also the infrastructure. But turns out, by geotagging and disseminating the data more widely, that allows the community, including the academics and professionals, to make much more meaningful use. For instance, by making use of the geotag demographic and census data and correlating with data from other sources, our academics and professionals have been able to make much better analysis of issues like housing, poverty, social problems, epidemiology, healthcare, etc. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg, we believe. The multiplying effect of geotagging data and making them more widely available in a spatially enabled manner is so huge that we are gradually abandoning our traditional mindset of determining the purpose before compiling geospatial data. Rather, we are starting to take the leap to think first about how we could spatially enable the data we set together. Now, this brings me to the initiative of common spatial data infrastructure that we have been taking forward in Hong Kong. The concept of a CSDI is simple. It's a platform that facilitates all kinds of data to be geotagged and to be shared with the community in a spatially enabled manner. And our motivation for CSDI actually starts with the built environment, with land use planning, land administration, building structures, infrastructure, utility networks, transport networks, and other physical attributes of a city, which are traditionally the targets of a GIS. Now, in a sense, CSDI started off as an answer to the challenge I have set out at the beginning, how Hong Kong can continue to grow as a highly compact city in a livable and sustainable manner. Now, the CSDI will become the ultimate smart map upon which all kinds of spatial data relating to the building and running of the built environment of the city can be collated, combined, and shared in a spatially enabled manner. With this, we can better optimize the expansion and development of the city and the various infrastructure and systems that support its vital function in a much more efficient, more convenient, less resource-consuming, and more sustainable way, making best use of the limited remaining land that could be used for development in Hong Kong. Unfortunately, probably that would also mean the land is going to be even more valuable then. Now, CSDI is no longer a dream to Hong Kong. We have already set out a roadmap to take it forward within 5 years. To us, CSDI is not simply a question of putting in place the hardware and software systems. It goes much wider. We recognize that CSDI is as much, if not more important, about the policy and institutional framework to drive the adoption of spatial technology and common technological standards. The generation and maintenance of data comprising core spatial framework data, and the mindset and willingness to share them and make use of them across different sources, and also the capacity to promote and facilitate development of technologies and applications that make use of spatial data. So with 4D mapping, we are developing Hong Kong into a spatially enabled world city. When we finish the CSDI, we will be effectively providing a platform for a simulated built environment of a city that supports all kinds of applications on it, that provides tremendous potential and opportunities for us to prompt, test, and solve the problems that concern the building and running of our city. Now, but our ambitions go beyond the built environment. Indeed, why stop there? My vision for CSDI is much broader. All aspects of economic activities, social services, and actually human endeavors have a spatial dimension after all. After all, they all relate to things that happen in the real world and all have a link to the physical environment. And it's only a logical step for the CSDI to be expanded to cover all such activities eventually, to geotag and share the data of these activities in a spatially enabled manner. Now, this is where my vision of the spatial data infrastructure serving as a bridge and conduit between the virtual world and real world emerges. I observe that with the advance of the internet, increasingly we are seeing these activities migrating and expanding into the virtual world, the online world. The virtual world has certainly expanded our horizons, shortened our distances, bringing together people and activities that would not have been possible before. Now, the fact that internet tech giants have now taken over traditional firms big on physical business speaks of how much the virtual world has grown and overshadowed the real world. However, I strongly believe that the physical city in the real world, like Hong Kong, remains very much the bedrock of the human society. The physical world still needs development. City life is still thriving. People are still flocking to the cities. Urbanized areas are still expanding. In fact, many people have touted urbanization as a much more efficient and less resource-intensive way of servicing a population, and it's the only way that our planet Earth could sustain its still growing population. And more, we are actually seeing virtual world technologies getting back into the physical world. Now, nowadays, using apps to take hire cars to travel faster and more efficiently, to find needed shops and services in the neighborhood, to find new friends or meet old ones close by, and to associate or converse on issues concerning the local communities. These are just the beginning. Augmented reality that gives you location-sensitive and personalized information about a restaurant or shop before you walk in. Spatial guides that introduce you to museums, scenic spots, historic routes, and monumental buildings. Automated transport systems that move people and goods from point to point in a more efficient and convenient manner. Now, these are the things that are happening. And who knows what other technologies and applications are around the corner that straddle both the virtual and physical world and benefit the people living in both. The way I see it is that the spatial data infrastructure, the smart map I have been talking about, and the accompanying GIS technology are key to this merger of the real and virtual worlds. I believe we can and will live in a better physical city environment that is expanded and augmented rather than diminished or supplanted by the virtual reality of online world. Now, through the spatial data infrastructure, we can reinforce the connections of individuals with the physical world they live in, while not losing the benefits brought about by the virtual world. When we look back from the future, it may seem obvious to make use of GIS technology to spatially enable the data and apps we use and to match up the virtual online world with the real one that we are physically living in every minute of our lives. So to conclude, the terms 4D mapping and common spatial data infrastructure are not just fancy names for Hong Kong. They represent a vision to continue to build and enrich Hong Kong both in the physical and the virtual domain, and to merge the two to bring maximum benefits to its peoples, communities, and businesses. So in the not too distant future, I hope to welcome you to Hong Kong as a spatially enabled world city and enjoy your journey in the physical environment of the city, which, by the way, has a lot of green and a lot of culture and a lot of good food as well. And a city running highly efficiently and sustainably thanks to serious planning through the use of spatial technology. And I hope your experience there would be augmented by the virtual reality of the city, which evolves around the spatial data we have built. Now, with this thought, I thank you for listening.